They praised Spartan women as free, but the truth was brutal. You were forced into marriage, used as a womb for the state, and when your husband betrayed you, the world said it was your fault. That was the life of a Spartan woman. She was 16 the day childhood ended. Her hair was cut short, her childhood dress stripped away, and the word tradition was driven into her like a knife. They called it a wedding, but she felt only dread. It was a show for the city, never a vow for her heart. A husband was forced upon her, a soldier twice her age. His loyalty already chained to Sparta long before she was handed to him like property. There were no tender words, no blessing of love, only disgust twisting in her chest as he touched what she never offered. This was no marriage, it was violation wrapped in ritual. And so the rest of her life began, not with love, but with the sound of footsteps dragging her into a role she despised and could never escape. Her husband belonged more to the barracks than to her. Nights passed in silence until the door scraped open and he entered like a stranger. He didn't speak, didn't even meet her eyes. He would touch her as if she were an order to be carried out, not a partner to be loved. And before dawn, he was gone again, leaving only the cold of the stone floor and the echo of his absence. At first, she tried to believe this was temporary, that love might grow with time, but Sparta had already stolen that possibility. Husbands weren't chosen for affection, but for duty. A soldier's wife was expected to produce children, nothing more. When she lingered in the market, neighbors praised her strength, whispering that she was lucky, freer than Athenian women. Yet what kind of freedom was this when her body was treated like state property? One night, lying awake after he had left, she pressed her hand against her stomach, desperate to claim something that might finally be hers. In the silence, she imagined the flutter of life, whispering that maybe motherhood could stitch back the pieces Sparta had stolen. For a fleeting moment, hope painted a future where she was more than a vessel, where a child might see her, not just the state. But as the torchlight flickered across the stone walls, the truth returned, sharp and merciless. Even her children would not be her own. They would be weighed, judged, and trained for Sparta. She realized then, her body was not her prison alone. Even her womb had chains. Months later, her belly swelled, and the neighbors finally began to nod in approval. Yet their eyes never lifted to her face. Every smile, every murmur of praise was aimed at her stomach alone, as if the woman had already vanished, replaced by the promise of a warrior. In Sparta, pregnancy wasn't tender expectation, but public duty. They did not call her mother-to-be, only vessel. She felt hands graze her belly in the market, strangers speaking of him as if he already belonged to them, as if his cries would be Sparta's, not hers. Each approving glance carved deeper into her. She was no longer a girl, nor even a wife. She was a container, hollowed by duty. The birth was a battlefield. Sweat poured into her eyes as her nails clawed the stone floor, her body convulsing while midwives shouted prayers to Artemis, Sparta's goddess of childbirth and survival, pleading for both mother and child to live. Hours stretched like eternity until, finally, another cry split the air. A boy. For one fleeting moment, joy overpowered the agony. She named him Lysander, whispering his name as if speaking it aloud could make him hers forever. She pressed him close, trembling, daring to believe he belonged to her. But Sparta always takes back what it lends. At 7 years old, the state came to claim him, and she could do nothing but watch. She stood frozen in the doorway as his tiny sandals slapped the dust, the sound swallowed by the chanting rhythm of boys in formation. Bronze helmets, far too large for their heads, wobbled as they marched toward the Agoge, Sparta's school of cruelty, where childhood was carved into obedience and fear became a teacher. He wasn't allowed to look back, not even once, as if a mother's gaze was dangerous. Neighbors cheered, calling it honor, their voices sharp as knives, deafening in their pride. Her chest ached with the truth. She had nearly died to give him life, only to watch Sparta strip him away, piece by piece. Her daughters stayed, but even their fate was no gentler. They were trained not to fight, but to suffer. To run barefoot on stone, to wrestle in dust, to harden their bodies not for war, but for childbirth. Every blister, every bruise was preparation for sacrifice. And then came the night when her fragile hope shattered completely. She learned her husband's loyalty, so strictly demanded by Sparta, had never been hers to keep. He had betrayed her with another woman. For the first time, her pain spilled beyond silence. She went to her mother, desperate for comfort, desperate for someone to tell her she was not to blame. But even here, Sparta's cruelty spoke through her own blood. Her mother's words cut sharper than any sword. If he strayed, it was because you failed. A good wife keeps her husband loyal. Think about that for a moment. Betrayed by her husband, condemned by her mother, abandoned by the only people who should have protected her. Tell me, what is more suffocating? The betrayal itself, or the certainty that even your grief will be turned against you? Years passed. Her house echoed with silence. The boy she had nearly died to bring into the world was gone, swallowed by the Agoge. At night, she folded his empty clothes, pressing them to her face as if they could still carry his scent. Neighbors called it honor, but to her it was only loss. Her daughters remained, but even they were shaped by Sparta's cruelty. Their games were drills, their laughter drowned out by orders to run, wrestle, harden their bodies for childbirth. She watched them stumble home with bruised knees and split lips, praised not for who they were, but for how much pain they could endure. They said Spartan women were strong, but strength meant learning to love children you knew would never stay yours. Lysander returned from the Agoge, taller, broader, unrecognizable. The softness in his face had been carved away. His eyes no longer searched for her arms. They searched for glory, for approval, for the commanders who now held his soul. She reached for him, but he did not see her. And in that moment, she understood the cruelest truth of all. Even motherhood was never hers to keep. Neighbors gathered to watch the young men march in bronze armor, shields heavy against their shoulders. She stepped forward, placing a shield in his hands. Her lips whispered the words Sparta demanded of every mother. With it or on it, with his shield or on his shield, alive in victory or dead in honor. Her voice was steady, her heart was breaking. Time carved wrinkles into her skin. Word came that her husband had died in battle, and Sparta crowned her with empty honor. Neighbors bowed, calling her noble, not because of who she was, but because of the man she had belonged to. They placed land in her name, but the whispers followed like shadows. She belongs to Sparta. Even in widowhood, her existence was measured only by the courage of men. By old age, the truth was clear. She had been praised as bold, as free, as powerful, but her body had never been hers. Her marriage had never been love. Her children had never truly been hers to raise. She sat alone in silence, remembered not as a woman, but as a vessel that had given Sparta warriors. If they died bravely, she was honored. If they did not, she dissolved into nothing, erased from memory as though she had never lived at all. So why did it suck to be a Spartan woman? Because her entire life was engineered, stage by stage, not for her joy, not for her dreams, but for the survival of the state. Childhood was stripped away in ritual. Marriage was a prison dressed as tradition. Motherhood was sacrifice without ownership. Betrayal was turned against her, her pain blamed on her own shoulders. And even old age offered no peace, only the hollow echo of Sparta's demands. They told her she was free, they told her she was powerful. But tell me, what is worse? To be openly denied freedom, or to be told you are powerful while every step you take has already been chosen for you? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.